Yo, how's it going everybody? It's me, Attk. Today's video we're going to be going over a complete weapons guide for Shenhe and basically discussing her best in slot weapons and also some other different weapons depending on what build you're actually going for with your Shenhe. And so we're basically going to be covering her best support weapons and also her best main DPS type weapons and also sub DPS weapons. But if that sounds interesting to you guys, remember to subscribe. I'm covering Shenhe in quite detail, but anyway, let's get into the video. So a few things to keep in note about Shenhe's actual kit is that she actually, in terms of her supporting capabilities, is going to factor in with attack percent quite a bit. So Shenhe's attack is actually going to factor into her kit quite a bit, at least in terms of her support, because the more attack you have, basically, the more she's going to give her benefits to other party members and also herself, I believe. So attack is definitely a very good thing to have on your Shenhe. Our first option that we're going to consider is the Blackliff polearm. Now this one comes with crit damage up to a pretty good substantial amount at 55%, so it definitely gives you quite a bit of crit damage. And then also after defeating enemies, your attack is going to be increased by 12% for 30 seconds. So the passive on this is going to be nice with her kit, and also it's a pretty accessible weapon considering that it's only in the Star Glitter shop. And so after you probably wish for your Shenhe, you could possibly pick one of these up and you're going to be chilling with it, because this is a pretty good option overall on Shenhe just because of its passive synergy, and also its crit damage is going to be very nice in terms of her overall damage. The deathmatch is probably going to be a very good option if you are planning on running her as just a sub DPS and not having to run like a Blizzard Strayer set or something on her. Deathmatch is a overall just decent option as well, and then you do get some extra attack from it right here. However, it does have a low base attack, so if you are planning on stacking a whole bunch of attack percent on your Shenhe and just going full on for support, I don't necessarily recommend actually using Deathmatch. It is very good if you are going for sub DPS, but not as much of a support weapon. Lithic Spear is probably going to be one of her actual best supporting type of weapons if you are planning on running her as more so of a support. Now the reason behind this is because its base attack is a very high 44 right here, so that's going to get up to 565, but then also its passive, if you do have a bunch of other leeway characters in your team, it's going to give you some even more attack right here. And so overall, if you are planning on running Shenhe as just a support, this weapon is actually basically for you. Now, it's not had a run in quite a while, but it might actually be on Shenhe's weapon banner, so keep an eye out for that. Prototype Star Glitter is an okay option if you are just using one of the forge weapons basically. Energy recharge is an okay stat on her just because her elemental burst cost is very high at 80, and so having reliability on that is going to be pretty nice. But if you really want reliability and a better blend with her actual kit, I would recommend the Favonius Lance right here. It just has a higher base attack, so it's going to be nicer with Shenhe. And then also its passive is going to be able to give you some more energy particles and keeping that burst up even more than a prototype Star Glitter would be able to. Now the Royal Spear is actually a pretty decent option if you're considering Shenhe's overall build. And now the reason behind this is because if you do plan on going more so of a support kind of weapon with Shenhe, this actually could work out pretty good. Plus, since if you're not using her really as a damage dealer, you don't really have to worry too much about crit rate, but this is going to basically allow you to crit occasionally pretty much with its passive right here, and it's just going to keep building up if you aren't critting. But basically you'd just be stacking a whole bunch of attack and using this weapon's high base attack also. And it's basically kind of similar to what we talked about earlier with the Lithic Spear, except I think the Lithic Spear is still probably better because of its leeway attack bonus right here that you're getting. And Cross Spear, this one might actually be pretty decent as well, just because it gives you that extra elemental skill damage, which is actually where a lot of Shenhe's actual skill damage is going to come from, especially if you are doing reactions. This elemental mastery stat's going to go into that quite a bit. And then after your elemental skill hits opponents, your character loses 3 energy but regenerates 3 energy every 2 seconds for the next 6 seconds. So pretty much this is going to give you some pretty good energy economy, and also it has a high base attack, so it's a pretty viable option. The Catch Spear is also another good option as well because of its energy recharge and also its elemental burst and elemental burst damage and elemental burst crit rate bonus right here. Now Shenhe doesn't necessarily do the most elemental burst damage, but basically the point of casting her burst is there to support your teammates or support Shenhe herself. And now it actually is going to be a little bit better if you are using it to support Shenhe herself. And the reason behind that is because if you are using a Bennett or something with Shenhe, this is going to factor into more of the damage that you're going to actually be getting. But in terms of off-field, this still can be a pretty decent weapon. Although, like, if you are planning on going like an emblem set with your Shenhe, I don't think that this is necessarily going to be like that crazy, just because her elemental burst really isn't for sub DPS specifically anyway. Wavebreaker's Fin is actually a pretty decent option as well. You're going to have a very, very high base attack, plus this attack gain bonus right here. Plus, its passive is pretty decent if you are getting that extra like elemental burst damage. Now, once again, her burst isn't really like mainly for damage, I would say. It's mainly like a supporting type of burst, but it's still a pretty decent option. And yeah, this is definitely an option to consider if you have like one of these laying around. Now getting into the 5-star options. Now the first one obviously is the Vortex Vanquisher, and now this one's going to be pretty decent if you are running her as like a pseudo main DPS or something. You're going into the field like doing some auto attack, something like that, boosting out your attack percent. You're going to get a lot of attack percent off of this weapon, but really it's not necessarily her like best in slot, I would say. It's usable, and maybe if you are using her with like a Yunjin or something, this weapon could actually be pretty viable, something like that. Could be pretty interesting, but basically it's just very hard to actually keep those stacks up because you'd actually have to auto attack with her on the field. If you are planning on just using her as a support, I would probably just recommend sticking with one of the 4-star options if you're just using her as a support. Jadewing Spear is probably a pretty good option for Shenhe as well, partially because what you can able to do with this is you don't have to actually run like the Blizzard Strayer 4-piece set or something like that. So you could probably run like a 2-piece of that and the 2-piece of like elemental burst damage, or you could run like a 4-piece Noblesse, something like that. It basically is going to free up some of your options. Plus, this does have a very high base attack, which is going to be nice because then you get like a lot of, you can run on like still a lot of attack percent. Plus, it's passive right here. You do have to stack it up, but it does give you that attack percent as well. So, honestly, I think this is probably a better option in terms of your overall build than like a Vortex Vanquisher. Skyward Spine is a decent option as well, partially for its high burst uptime, basically, with its elemental energy recharge stat right here, and it has a high base attack. Plus, you're also getting this crit rate, and you're also normal attack speed bonus, which is going to be extremely nice as well. And your normal charge attacks are going to do these vacuum blades, which give you a lot of DPS as well. Homa is probably a good option as well, especially if you are going for like a main DPS build. I think this is probably going to be one of the best options. I personally am going to be running this with a 4-piece Blizzard Strayer set, basically going for that crit rate from that, running her in a freeze comp, which I think is going to be probably one of her best main DPS kind of roles. This is going to give you a lot of crit damage, but then you're also going to be getting this extra HP and an attack bonus based on your max HP, which is going to actually be a very, very nice. And also, I might actually just be running Xingqiu as my like basically healer in that team comp, so I probably will have below 50% HP quite a bit of the time, and so that's going to free up like a slot for like a Kazuha or something in this team comp, which I might actually consider running something like that as my general team comp, depending on what I end up doing. But this weapon is probably one of the best damage dealing options that is going to be for Shenhe. Engulfing Lightning is a pretty decent option as well if you are going like a 4-piece emblem, kind of like a supporting type of build with your Shenhe. And basically what you can do with this is, since it does have the energy recharge stat, you're going to have your burst up quite a bit, but this also gives you an attack percent bonus based on your energy recharge. And so basically you can balance out your energy recharge and attack and actually get a pretty decent build going right there. I'm going to cover her actual best in slot weapon real quick right here. I have to blur it out, but it's called the Calamity Queller, and this is going to have a very high base attack. I think it goes to like 749-ish. Somewhere around there, something like that. I think that might be where it goes. It has an attack percent substat, but it's like, I think, like 20%-ish, so it's not that much. But what its passive does is you gain a 12% damage bonus to all elemental damage, and then you also gain the stacks of after using your elemental skill, causing your attack to increase by 3.2% per second, and this attack increase can stack up to 6 times, and when the character equipping this weapon is not on the field, the consummation attack increase is doubled. So basically, instead of the 6 stacks of like 3-point-something%, you're going to be gaining like 6.4% attack for each of these stacks that you have while you're off the field. So this is definitely a support-oriented weapon for Shenhe, actually. But anyway, that's it for my weapons guide for her. Basically, in terms of what you're going to be looking for is if she's going to be used as a sub DPS, I would recommend using like one of the sub DPS type of weapons, like Engulfing Lightning, something like that, or like a Primordial Jadewing Spear potentially. those are the 5-star ones from that. But then actually, the catch is a good option for sub DPS as well. If you're going for support, definitely prioritize weapons that have attack percent, as they are going to give you like the most support viability, I would say, with how her kit works in terms of support. And then if you are going for damage, I would recommend the crit damage weapons, something like that, or like a Vortex Vanquisher potentially. If you're running her as a main DPS, it's going to be pretty good with her kit overall. Now, in terms of like her actual best weapon, I would think it's actually going to end up being Staff of Homa, just because it does give you that good boost of the attack, and also gives you a lot of damage off of the crit damage. So I think it's probably going to be her best in slot weapon, just saying. Even though her like specific weapon, it's more support oriented because Shenhe is support oriented, but her kit actually allows herself to deal a pretty good amount of damage. So she's kind of like a Rosaria in terms of how much like auto attack damage you're going to be getting. It's pretty much just like, oh, if you want to main this character, you can main him, and that's pretty much how I look at this character, and that's why I'm building her with a main DPS focus myself. This guide actually helped you guys out a little bit and actually see kind of why these weapons are actually going to be pretty decent on Shenhe, and a little bit more information about her kit. But anyway, it's been me, Attk. I'll see you guys in the next one. Farewell.